Tonight's tale takes you inside a job interview unlike any other. A hotel where every rule is deadly serious, where a wrong word or glance could cost you far more than a paycheck. Behind each door waits something watching, testing, feeding on mistakes, and the woman who led him here may not be human at all. Step inside the Magnum and see if you can make it out. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. Last October, I applied for a hotel attendant job, and the interview had some special rules. I'd been out of work since August, like a lot of people, and this opportunity came up in a conversation at a bar. I was crashing on a college buddy's couch at 22. We decided to meet up with his girlfriend, just to have an excuse to get out and drink with our old sorority sisters. Outdoor regulations and 50% capacity were being stretched to their limits in Hoboken. The only change since the pandemic was that no one was allowed to sit at the bar anymore, and they'd put out fewer tables, which meant cramming together at the ones they had. That's how I met Catherine. In the commotion, my group rushed to find seats with some friends we already knew. Catherine was talking to my friend Jill as everyone struggled to make room for us, and she was hesitant to move during the shuffle. Once everyone settled, my roommate and Jill went to another table, and Catherine got stuck with us. Catherine was a pretty blonde with big brown eyes and definitely one of Jill's sorority sisters. As we started making introductions, Catherine was quiet, of course feeling awkward and left behind. I guessed she only knew Jill, so I made a point of politely striking up a conversation with her. Naturally, there's a limited number of topics two strangers can comfortably talk about upon first meeting. And asking about her job was unavoidable for me. I work at the Magnum, she said, as if I should know where that was. To be fair, most of my friends who got business degrees and landed some sort of financial analyst job answered that question the same way. My biology major didn't carry the prestige of any particular company name. When I asked, she said it was a luxury hotel in the city. I thought hotels weren't doing so well these days, I said. It's the kind of place where guests are rich enough to rent out entire floors for up to 6 weeks, Catherine explained. We're not too concerned about foot traffic. The pay is good. The tips are pretty decent too. The biggest problem is the staff shortage, since, the giant elephant in the room named unemployment that all of us young workers refused to acknowledge was hovering between us. I spent the rest of the night talking to her about hockey and learned she was a Devils fan. I wasn't desperate enough to consider a hotel attendant job until a month ago, when my already pathetic savings dwindled to almost nothing and no other prospects appeared in my field. I stared at my last can of tuna, and although Brian didn't ask, I knew I should either pay rent or move out. I wasn't moving in with my hard-ass dad, and my mom had just sold her house to cover hospital bills. Money from anywhere would do. I decided to take a chance and texted Catherine, hoping she wouldn't be too offended that this was the first time I'd contacted her since we met. I got an automated message back saying I was texting a landline number. I figured she had given me a fake number. Part of me found it amusing. I called, half expecting an automated machine to tell me it was connecting me to the moon in a rejection system. It would have been a funny little anecdote to tell Jill if that had happened, and maybe a worrying thing for my social skills. But no. After 2 rings, Catherine picked up. Hello. Oh, hi, I said, surprised to hear her voice on the other end. Catherine? Is this Catherine? I suddenly realized I didn't remember her last name. From the bar at Jill Delaney's sorority thing? This is Jesse, by the way. Smooth as sandpaper. Oh, I remember. You okay over there, Jesse? Yeah, I just didn't think you'd pick up a landline. Right, she replied awkwardly. I forgot. They don't let us use our cell phones here, so I got into the habit of giving out my work number. Sorry about that. You can call me Kat. Kat. Okay. Are you at work? I can call back later, or you could call me, or I could hear myself making a big deal out of a simple question. I have a question about your job. Are you still hiring? I mean, the Magnum, like, is it still hiring? I heard myself start to ramble nervously and wondered why I hadn't died of embarrassment yet. But after that mess, Catherine didn't hang up. She even said she'd ask her manager about any upcoming openings. I didn't hear back for 2 days after that call and had almost forgotten about it when my buddy Brian dropped a manila envelope on my lap. It was addressed to me, though I usually had my mail sent to my mom's address in South Jersey. But there it was. When I opened it, inside was a small introductory letter typed on slightly textured paper. To Jesse Falks, your interest in joining the Magnum's guest services team has been noted. We were referred to your information and believe you are a good fit for our hotel's objectives. We would like to invite you for a formal interview to further discuss your skills and qualifications regarding future steps. Please be present at the following address no later than 10 in the morning on Saturday, October 10th, 2020. Prior to your interview, please be sure to study the following rules before arriving and be prepared upon arrival. 1. If you are driving, you may park in the east lot in the blue painted spaces. Do not park in white spaces or spaces reserved for guests. 2. You will enter through the east gate. If you do not see any signs, there is a brass eagle carved into the entrance door. A. If the door is open, enter and proceed to instruction 3. A. B. If the door is closed, walk around to the south gate, which has a decorative statue of a woman, and proceed to instruction 3. B. Bring a copy of your resume. A. If you arrive via the scenario described in 2A, a hotel employee will greet you there. Give the blonde receptionist your coat and hat and any other personal belongings you may have, and deposit any electronic devices on your person into the box on the small table next to the mirror. B. If you arrive via the scenario described in 2B, you will enter alone. Place your devices, similarly, into the box on the small table, but there will be no mirror next to it. Leave all personal items such as wallets, purses, backpacks, timekeeping devices, billfolds, keys, paper, notebooks, books, pens, pencils, and hats on the chair next to the table. You may keep your coat on. 4. Proceed to room 2 Newtons on the provided map. Please take the time to memorize your route. You will not be permitted to speak with staff or guests under any circumstances. Do not interact or deviate from your direct path. 5. Upon arrival, knock twice. Enter when you hear 2 knocks in return. 6. If you arrived under scenario 2, a sit in the chair on the left. If you arrived under scenario 2B, sit in the chair behind your interviewer's desk. In the rare case that all chairs are occupied, stand in the left corner. In the rare case that there is only one chair, stand in the left corner. 7. If it is only you and the interviewer, you will introduce yourself first with the phrase, "It is a wonderful day to be out and about. It's lovely to meet you. I am," your full name, "here for the open position." But if you entered via scenario 2B, you may introduce yourself in your own way. 8. If there is anyone else in the room, you must wait your turn to be spoken to. If there is a woman in the room wearing a blue suit, or a man with a feather in his left breast pocket, do not answer them no matter what they say to you. If there is a man wearing a hat, look immediately at the floor, and never look at him for the remainder of his time in the room. If there is a man in red, do not say or confirm your name at any point during the interview. When asked to respond in this group, the phrase you will say to the interviewer is, "It is an honor to know you. I am excited for the opportunity to be a part of the Grand's illustrious team." 9. The interview will officially begin. Answer the questions truthfully, except as noted above. 10. You are not permitted to leave the room without permission. 11. Upon exiting, you will wait for any women in the room to stand and leave first. Be sure to stand when they begin to rise and sit back down when they are gone. If the man with the feather is still in the room, you must wait for his permission before you can leave. 12. Upon leaving, you will exit through the east gate. 13. Do not mention this list to anyone. We are excited to meet you. Please call with any questions or for further clarification. The Magnum. I read the list of rules and flip through the other pages in the packet. There was a map of the parking lot and the first floor, contact information, dress code requirements, and an old-fashioned flyer listing the benefits, responsibilities, and average salary of a hotel attendant, far too good for the minimum wage of my work experience. I'm definitely being pranked, I told Brian, letting him read through the list of rules. Brian laughed and told me to throw it in the trash, or maybe frame it. It was garbage, yes, but I knew the only person who would put that much care into garbage for me. I felt flattered, honestly. This was pretty elaborate, and I'll admit it was very detailed, down to the floor plan. I was about to text Kat, but remembered I still didn't have her cell number. Instead, I called the landline to say thanks for the prank gift. I didn't send you anything, Kat said, with genuine surprise in her voice. I thought it was funny, Kat. The list of rules is a little dramatic, don't you think? Rules? Kat sounded confused on the other end, and then I laughed. Oh, right. I forgot how weird they are when you first start this job. What? I didn't send you anything, Kat continued. All I did was mention you to my manager. Lied a little that you had some experience in customer service, not like this job is too demanding. He asked for your name and address, and I knew you were living with Jill's boyfriend, so it was easy. Your name is Jesse Fawkes, right? Yeah. He sent you a packet, right? Lots of weird rules? If it is only you and the interviewer, you will introduce yourself with the phrase, "It is a wonderful day to be out and about," I read in a dramatic voice. Yes, Kat said, laughing a little. You should follow them. Really? I'll never remember all this crap, I said, not without a checklist or something. Hold on. Kat hung up, and she didn't call back for a few minutes. Not until the next day. Hey, Jesse, Kat said. I asked around and I was right. You don't need to worry. It's always like this. The rules are a bit over the top. If you want, I can go over them with you, but, most importantly, you just need to follow the rules for Branch 2B. That's it? Yep. At that point, I felt the weight lift off my chest at the thought of having an income again. If these people wanted me to sing and tap dance, I'd learn the choreography. Fine. At the end of the day, I'd have a job, and it's easier to hire someone than to fire them. If it was all just an elaborate test, fine. I asked Kat for the exact lines I needed to say for my interview play. She started listing them off casually, but then trailed off. If you don't think you can remember it all by Saturday, Kat mentioned, shyly, I could come over to help you study. I winced. She was inviting herself over. Kat seemed nice enough, and I wanted to think it was just a kind gesture, but this felt deeper. I held the phone to my chest, panicking, looking for Brian to hiss my anxiety to, but he was at the gym. Suggest a public place, I told myself. How about we talk about this somewhere? Like, a park, tomorrow. When do you get off work? I get off at 6 tomorrow evening. It would be dark by then. There's a small coffee shop nearby. We could meet there. She agreed, and I hung up, feeling good about moving the meeting to a less private location. Brian laughed at me when I told him, and I realized I had probably just made it into a date. Shit. The not a date study session for the rules actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Kat seemed genuinely excited to get down to business and review with me what I needed to do in each situation. She held the list and had me recite each step. We cut out the warnings and just stuck to the bare necessities of the scenario she and the other employees had gone through. And after putting your stuff in the box, but I can keep my coat, I continued. When you enter the room and sit in the back chair, you will say, "It is an honor to know you. I am excited for the opportunity to be a part of the Grand's illustrious bullshit team." Catherine smiled brightly, watching me with her big brown eyes. You're hired, she joked. I felt good that Saturday. My required attire was another issue, but not as bad as the others. Black pants, black collared shirt, black shoes, red tie. I wore the pants I'd worn to my graduation and borrowed a black dress shirt from Brian. Jill and I found a tie for $1 at a thrift store. I took the subway into the city and got to the Magnum around 9:50. As Kat had promised, the east entrance was closed, which meant I had to walk around to the south entrance. The building looked like any other hotel I'd seen in the city, tall and made of brick with carved statues and emblems that added a grand atmosphere to the whole structure's presence. Plus, it was right across from a park, but only 4 blocks away from a Chipotle. Nothing in the city beats a neighborhood with a good fast food joint. But before I even stepped inside, things seemed to be off script. The east door was closed as expected, but so was the south one. The carving of the woman stared down at me, refusing to budge. This was the south side of the building. This was the door I should have been able to walk through, but when I pulled on the handle, I couldn't open it. I knocked and waited. No one came. I hurried back to the east door, half worried it would now be open. If that were the case, I'd be screwed. I only knew the rules for Scenario B. But when I tried that door again, it was just as locked as the one before. What the hell? I walked around the block, but couldn't find another entrance. It was now almost 10:05, and I started to wonder if something was wrong. So I did the only thing I could think of and called Kat. She picked up quickly. "What do you mean, the doors are closed?" Kat snapped. "It is Saturday, right?" Yeah. You're on Robert's calendar for today." Wait, I'm coming down. Go to the east side of the building and pass the door. Then go into the little alley. There's a service entrance there. I can get you in. Wait there." She hung up and I jogged around the wide building. The little alley she was talking about was a strange recess for such a fancy building. The walls were flat. Half-open dumpsters were crammed on either side, reeking of garbage. Even in the middle of the morning, the sky was nearly dark in that small space. The door Kat mentioned was a plain, gray door that looked damaged but still functional, completely separate from the ornate facade out front. I paced back and forth on the cracked asphalt, avoiding glass shards and overflowing bins. Then, the gray door opened, and I paid attention, but it wasn't Kat. "What are you doing here, kid? You lost?" a man asked. He was wearing a black and red uniform with a small name tag that read Eddie. Instinctively, I was going to say no and ramble about being here for an interview, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't in the interview script, and if this was my only way in, I couldn't afford to get kicked out of it. "I'm new. J. Rob told me to come in today," I said, boldly throwing out the name I'd heard Kat say. "But I gestured awkwardly toward the door, trying to convey my attempt to get in and hoping the vague problem could pass as an understandable barrier. "Ah," he said, as if my vague situation was warranted. His thin lips pressed together, and he looked at me oddly. Maybe he was about to say something, but instead, he quickly slung a large trash bag that had been behind him at his feet and held the door open for me. "Then get in. He's got an interview or something today. You can wait for him in the break room. 15E. I took the door and held it so he could get the trash. "Thanks, man," Eddie nodded. His trash bag was leaking some kind of slime, which is never a good look, but he didn't seem to mind it slung over his shoulder. As he walked past me, I didn't get the typical whiff of garbage, but instead the smell of something like iron. He kept walking, and I went inside the hotel, the door closing behind me. I looked down at the polished floor and saw the trail the trash bag had left. It was a pinkish-brown red, like the color you see on a counter or a cutting board after slicing a steak. Old meat, I thought to myself. I realized Eddie wouldn't take long to toss the bag, and I needed to be out of sight before he came back, so I wouldn't be discovered. I hurried down the hallway through a set of double doors, heading further inside by my estimation, hoping to reach the main lobby or see room numbers to orient myself. Before long, the tile floor turned to green carpet, and the ornate facade returned as I entered the main rooms. I looked at the first door next to me, 25E. It wasn't where I needed to go, but it gave me the information I needed about which direction I was heading. Kat had shown me the direct route on the map, so I knew I had to get to the north wing of the building first, which meant following the E numbers until they got smaller, closer to number 1 near the main lobby. and then I could follow the old route from the south entrance. I still had my coat and my phone, but this wasn't unmanageable. I could fake it. First thing, I needed to ditch my personal items. The hallway was very elaborate, decorated with thin wooden tables and delicate gold lighting. There were expensive-looking art pieces made of ivory, jade, and bronze. I quickly took off my coat and my phone as I reached door 11E, bundled them both up, and shoved them into a large, beautiful porcelain vase. I wasn't going to lose a stupid interview over a technicality. I continued, half afraid I was lost, until I hit the first wall with a bust of some guy from the 1800s. Kat had mentioned it before. I was in the hallway, right behind the lobby, and now stood directly behind the front desk. All I needed to do from here was turn left, or I would have if I had come from the south. Now, I just needed to keep walking, and I'd be there. I had to keep going, turn right at the women's restroom, and then 2 Newtons would be on the right. As I passed the bust, 2 female employees were talking, turning the corner of the hallway and spotting me. When they did, they fell completely silent. They didn't slow down, but they stared, jaws slightly agape at the sight of me. I tried to smile back, but they averted their eyes and turned away, continuing on their way. One of them dropped something. It was heavy enough for them to have heard the loud clatter, but they turned the corner regardless instead of stopping. It was a key. I picked it up and saw it was clearly an old-fashioned room key, not a card for an electronic lock, but a brass key with a tag that read 001. I backtracked a bit, trying to get their attention. They were closer together now, arm in arm, whispering and giggling to each other. One of them glanced back at the empty hallway and looked genuinely surprised to see me. I held up the key, gesturing to what she'd dropped. She nodded and cocked her head to the side, as if trying to say, "Keep going." But she held a hand to her lips and then turned her back, linking arms with her friend to walk away quickly. I kept the key in my hand. This was the part of the hallway I was supposed to be on according to the route. The instructions said I wasn't allowed to talk to the staff. Maybe she knew that too. Maybe she was one of Kat's friends and was trying to help me. Should I have left the key on the floor, or was this part of the ambiguity? I was torn between just dropping it on the floor, but it was already in my hand. I could just give it to my interviewer and tell him what happened. Maybe that was the whole point. Finally, I found room 2 Newtons where Kat said it would be, the second to last door in a dead-end hallway. The last door, 001, was open, just a crack. Inside, the lights were off. I could catch a glimpse of the carpet on the floor. I knocked on the door of 2 Newtons as scripted. "Come in!" I heard a voice call from the other side of the door. I stayed put, relaxed, knowing what Kat and I had rehearsed. "Hey, I said come in," the person on the other side of the door said louder. I shifted a little, hesitating whether I should knock again. No. 2 knocks. Kat had even made a fist and knocked on the table when we practiced. I needed to wait for 2 knocks back. While I waited, I heard a sound behind me, from 001, the soft creak of a door hinge. When I turned, it was open wider, but I still couldn't see much from my angle. But I did hear something from inside. Someone was moving around, scraping against the wall opposite me. I heard the weak, moaning voice of an old man. "Help me," he said in a cracked and mournful tone. "Someone, please, help me." I don't know what made me weary. Maybe it was something in the voice. Desperate and raspy, yes, but it was a little too obvious, almost like it knew I was there to hear it. Some instinct told me to stay put. Then, the moaning stopped, and a heavy thudding started, like a fist banging against the wall. I heard the man inside groan and shuffle again, slowly moving along the length of the room, getting closer to the door. I knocked on 2 Newtons again. Hey, someone's in here!" I called out, only to get no response. The moaning got closer to the door. "Help me, Judges! Help!" I lunged for door 001, grabbed the handle, and slammed it shut. I didn't look into the room, but I caught a whiff of the scent coming from it. The thick, putrid smell of a sewer, like something had died and was rotting inside. Then, a hand shot out, grabbing my wrist and pulling hard. I was yanked back toward the opposite side of the hall and saw Kat pulling the door closed. Room 001 shook as the thing on the other side threw its full weight against the door. Kat turned to me, her hand outstretched. "The key!" she hissed. "Where's the key?" My hand trembled as I reached into my pocket for the brass key. I hadn't even fully pulled it out before Kat snatched it and locked the door. Another loud bang made her stumble back against the opposite side of the hall. And that's when I heard two calm knocks on the door behind me. I nearly jumped to the other side before remembering it was from room 2 Newtons, the one I was waiting for. I looked at Kat, who paused, adjusting her blouse. Kat gave me a reassuring nod and then straightened my tie. "Don't worry about it," Kat whispered quickly. "Tell them you locked the door without anyone's help. I wasn't here. Go in." I practically threw the door open and ran inside. 3 other members of the staff were sitting inside, all very composed and clearly a little confused by my breathless entrance and priceless expression. "What's the matter, honey? You look scared," the woman behind the desk asked. I quickly shut my mouth, realizing exactly who was there. There were 3 people in the room, as Kat had warned, but they weren't. They were more distracting than I had anticipated. Kat told me to be ready for the man in the red suit, and I was, from the moment I tripped over his chair. What I wasn't ready for was how badly burned he was. A hideous, pale pink scar ran all the way up his neck, pulling his chin, ear, and nostril into a wrinkled mess. One eye was permanently closed and the other was off-center. Then there was the woman standing in the corner. She was looming over a chair next to the man in red, her deep-set eyes fixed on me. Intense was an understatement. I felt like I was being monitored in the way I moved and how much noise I made as I passed her. She was very tall, so tall she had a slight hunch from years of craning her neck down to look at everyone. She didn't say anything to me, but her head turned and followed me as I walked. The last one was a woman in a green suit who I wasn't supposed to talk to. She was well-dressed and beautiful, but she was also the one sitting behind the desk where I was supposed to be interviewed. I wasn't supposed to talk to her, was I? That was the whole point Kat had drilled into my head. The person I had the least to worry about was the looming, tall woman who twitched slightly as I sat down in the chair. "Can I get you a glass of water?" the woman in green asked sweetly. "You're our 10 o'clock appointment, aren't you, Jesse Fawkes?" I wasn't supposed to answer her, right? Did that include nodding? "This one's so skinny," the tall woman said, her bulging eyes still fixed on me. Her pale tongue darted out to lick her lips. "Like a twig." "Be nice, Laurie," the man said to the tall woman. "Jesse, this is Laurie Bellaford, our esteemed lobby manager," he said, nodding to the tall woman. Then he gestured toward the woman in green. "Frederica Sardi, the general manager of this hotel, and I am Robert Strauss, head of reception and hiring manager. Can you tell us a little about yourself?" It's an honor to meet you all. I'm excited for the opportunity to be a part of the Grands. I couldn't remember the rest of the stupid phrase. "Illustrious team," Frederica corrected. "Close enough, I'd say." The 3 of them laughed. I looked at Robert. There was something in room 1. Robert held up a hand. "We'll get to that later." "Yes. Did you have any trouble finding the entrance?" Robert asked. "No." "No?" Someone was coming out as I was coming in." "At which gate?" "The east gate." "That's odd. I was sure both doors were locked," Robert said, staring intently at me. He raised an eyebrow, waiting for my answer. "When I couldn't provide one," he continued. "Why did you lie?" I didn't have trouble getting in." "Do you know what was in the bag?" Laurie asked, her voice high and excited. "What bag?" Robert asked, looking confused. "The bag Eddie was carrying out," Laurie said. I shook my head, too terrified by her gaze for my answer. Robert raised his eyebrows. "You met Eddie, the janitor?" "Not for long," I answered hesitantly. Robert and Frederica looked at each other, but Frederica smiled. "That is an entrance on the east side." Robert cleared his throat and continued. So you saw the two girls drop the key to room 1. Why did you keep it? I wasn't going to. I was going to give it to you when I came in here. But then, room 1, the woman in green added. I almost answered to confirm and then stopped myself. She smiled brightly, amused at having caught me about to speak. What did you do? Robert asked. I closed the door and locked it. That's all? Yes. Why didn't you go into the room to see who was calling out? He asked. I had a bad feeling. And you weren't tempted to look in there? To go in? Just to see? Robert asked. It was a test, wasn't it? I asked. Is one supposed to look in there? Not if they want to work here, Lori said, with her wrinkled, overly excited smile. Does she bother you? Frederica asked me suddenly, with a wicked smile. Meanwhile, Lori's wrinkled face contorted into a frown, and her eyes remained menacingly on me. I wanted to object, but I wasn't allowed to speak to her. I began to question my commitment to such twisted rules. She bothers you, doesn't she? Frederica prodded. You hear that, Lori? He thinks you're hideous. Lori stomped her foot forward and then suddenly loomed toward me, and I had nowhere to go but back in my chair as the woman with the terrifying eyes stared deeper into me. Then Robert cleared his throat. That's enough. Thank you. Lori and Frederica stood up, and I stood as well as they left the room. I looked back at Robert afterward. What is this place? A place that requires discretion, a good memory, and the ability to improvise. I think you'll fit in very well here, Robert said, standing and moving to the desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out some papers. Then he pulled out a handkerchief and reached up, pulling a piece of skin on his forehead up. I nearly jumped out of my seat as he started to peel the skin away. Holy! Robert continued to pull until half his face was removed, but underneath it wasn't muscle and tissue, just a normal half of a face. It was a disguise. A burn scar disguise. Excuse me, these things get itchy, but I would love to extend an offer to work for us. That was all makeup? I snapped. Part of the interview. The bag Eddie was carrying was to create suspicion, and Joe likes to scare the new guys in room 1. You see, as I said, this is an unpredictable job, and we need a certain type of person. We try to find out who that person is as quickly as possible. Robert wiped off the rest of the makeup with the handkerchief and looked like a man in his late 40s again. Most people would have cracked under Lori or forgotten the rule with Freddie. I gaped at him from the doorway. That's it? That was the interview? Exactly. You don't want to ask me any other questions? I already know everything I need to know about you. The fact that you were able to find us and then send us a request letter was a start to let me know you knew what kind of place this was. Following the rules and your reaction to the surprises we had for you told us everything else I needed to know. What kind of place do you work at that you need me to know how to react to a bloody bag and a guy moaning from another? Room. Robert sat up straight and smiled as if it were a question with a very obvious answer. We are a hotel of importance. Half of our job is to make it seem like a normal place, but it isn't. There are a lot of demands and protocols to follow, and it requires you to know how to handle yourself in a variety of situations. Did you have anyone help you with the rules? No, I said, as rehearsed. I wasn't supposed to show anyone in the first place, and this is another extreme part of the test? Good, Robert said. If you couldn't remember and follow instructions for the amount of time we gave you, then you wouldn't be fit to handle this job. But you're a natural. But you need to be independent enough that you're not completely devoid of critical thinking. You'll do very well here. Look, after all that, I don't know if I want this job. Robert didn't say anything, just showed me the starting salary. It's a walk through fire. But I can assure you, if you sign on to work with us, as long as you follow the rules, you'll be fine. The pay was good, extremely good. The first set of rules hadn't been so bad. If it was some weird idea to promote discretion, fine. Joe and Eddie were a setup. I could keep my mouth shut. If they were hiring me, and all I needed to do was learn a schedule, fine. So, I took the job. The pay was better than what I would have gotten working in a lab, and in that moment, everything shifted from terrifying to completely relaxing. I signed the contract right there and went home with a new set of rules, a schedule, and a signing bonus. I was thrilled, waving the check in Brian's face. Jill came over later and I thanked her profusely too. "Jill, I'm so glad you have good friends," I said as I tore open the envelope for the new list of rules. "What do you mean?" "Catherine." "Who?" "Catherine." I still couldn't remember her last name. "Your sorority sister. You were sitting and talking with her at the get-together before we got there." "Oh," Jill nodded. I turned back to my contract and pulled out the new list of rules, flipping to the first page. "You mean that blonde girl?" Jill asked. "I had just met her that night." "I thought she was your friend." "Rule 1. Never speak to Catherine. Never let her know your name. Fuck." Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well, if you can.